What if the way you've been managing stress is missing something big? You've tried pushing through, talking it out, even taking medication, but you're still exhausted and overwhelmed. Western medicine treats symptoms, but real stress relief starts before burnout happens. True healing isn't just in your mind, it's in your body, breath, and emotions. My guest is Tatiana Miller, a psychologist, executive coach, and the founder of RX for Life. She developed one of the first integrative medicine programs, blending Eastern and Western healing to help people manage stress and burnout. Her work with top executive athletes and Fortune 500 companies proves that true healing happens when we treat the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Today, we're breaking down why Western medicine alone isn't enough, and how Eastern wisdom helps regulate stress, and how movement, breathwork, and emotional intelligence can help you feel more in control. If stress is running your life, this episode is for you. This is the show for midlife women who want to stop second guessing and start feeling strong, focused, and fully themselves. I am Heike Yates, a midlife fitness expert and mindset coach. On the Pursue Your Spark podcast, I share simple, no fluff strategies for movement, mindset, and nutrition so that you can stop spinning your wheels and start showing up with strength and confidence. Because thriving in midlife doesn't start with perfection, it starts with one bold step. Strong, confident, fully you. That's how we do midlife. Hey, it's Heike. I wanted to jump in here real quickly. If you ever felt stuck in midlife, this is for you. My new book, Pursue Your Spark, is out now. It's your step-by-step guide to getting unstuck, reclaiming your confidence, and living fully on your terms. I wrote this book for every midlife woman ready to stop waiting and start thriving. The link's in the show notes, so go grab your copy and let's spark something big together. Hey everybody, I'm super excited to introduce Tatiana Miller to you guys today. Welcome to the show, Tatjana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking about holistic psychology and how it goes beyond traditional therapy. So that's a lot to unpack in our show today. But before we dive in, we want to know how Tatjana ignited her spark and took action to pursue her spark in her life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I always like to tell people that it's so important to listen to what life, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is trying to tell you, and where life is giving you messages. So for me, it started when I was a teenager, really. I started having a lot of health issues and got bounced around like is really typical in Western medicine, from specialist to specialist. Nobody knew what it was. I was, one specialist would say, oh, we're not sure, but take this. And then the next specialist would say, oh, we're not sure, but take this. And so before you know it, you're taking all these things and nobody really knows what's wrong with you, but you end up feeling worse rather than better. So the typical cycle story of Western medicine. And, this started when I was 15 years old and continued all the way till I was almost 25 years old. And it was just this ongoing cycle of, I know myself, I know that something's not right. I know I keep getting these symptoms and nobody can tell me what it was. I was told I had cancer. I was told I was crazy. I was told I was making it all up. All kinds of things, which is another really common thing that happens in Western medicine. Most of the time, my journey was about like, what are your symptoms? Let's try to fix the symptoms. So as I got older, I started to have this reoccurring kind of theme in my head, like there has to be another way. There has to be another way. There has to be another way. But I'd never really been exposed or heard of, holistic practices or alternative practices. And I started to get more and more into yoga. I started yoga when I was 17, when my sister died in a tragic car accident, and I started to have some panic attacks. And my therapist said, you should really try yoga. It helps a lot for your nervous system, for panic. And yoga has been sort of a cornerstone in my life because it's been my anchor in helping my brain and my body process crisis, trauma, hard situations. So yoga was sort of like the conduit for me to start to know, like, there are other ways, right? I don't have to take a Valium or a Xanax when I'm feeling anxious. If I go do my practice and I breathe and I meditate, life is okay. It's doable. I can do this. So yoga was sort of my conduit to get deeper into holistic practices and also Eastern psychology and Eastern philosophy. And I started to just self look for things, reading books, going to workshops, going to conferences. And I very quickly realized, like, there's this whole other world called holistic medicine that looks at the root, not the symptom, right? So by the time we get to a symptom, things have gone from the root up the trunk of the tree, through the branches, and then we see the symptoms. So if we're always just fixing symptoms, we're always going to continue to be unwell, right? And holistic medicine tells us that disease starts when we forget our true nature. Like, that moment we forget our true nature, we're going to be uneasy, whether it be in our mind, in our emotions, or in our body. So it made a lot of sense to me. Like, we have to figure out the root of the problem. We can't just keep band-aiding symptoms. And I just started to sign myself up for courses, classes, different things. And then I was forced to, because of my health issues, to take some time off from life. And I decided that I was going to go back to school. So I decided to go back to school and study psychology. And at the same time, I started to really take my own courses, my own classes in holistic medicine. And I didn't know how I was going to pay for any of this because studying and learning costs money, right? And so again, right, listening to the universe, I had this knowing inside of me that was like, you just need to do this. You just need to do this. You just need to do this. And one of the courses I had taken was with Deepak Chopra, who's a very famous, well-known person that has merged Eastern and Western and done it very beautifully. And he told a story in a class that I took with him where he said, one of the first people that came to the United States to start to teach meditation was in India. And he sat with the group of people that he lived with and ran his organization through. And he said to them, I have this calling to go to the United States and teach people meditation. And I'm going to do it. And one of the people that he was with said to him, well, that sounds great, but how are you going to pay for it? And the guy said, I don't know where the money is, but it's going to come. And so that always kind of stuck with me. And I just kept telling myself that. And I was with my older son, and we'd gone to eat hamburgers, just random hamburger place. I had signed up for my graduate courses. I had signed up for my holistic courses. And I ran into a friend that I hadn't seen for a very long time. We caught up, we chatted, and then I left, and then she left. And the next day she called me and she said, hey, my boss is looking for somebody to replace this person that's leaving, and I think you'd be amazing at it. And it was to be a pharmaceutical rep while I'm studying holistic medicine and psychology. And she's like, I think you'd be great at this. She didn't know that I was studying all this stuff, right? And I thought, oh, I don't know. And then she told me how much it pays. And I was like, there it is. There's the money. There's the money. And I said, when do I start? So while I am studying all this stuff, I'm also seeing the intricate, dark world of the pharmaceutical industry. And if that's not meant to be, I don't know what is, right? And so I quickly, as I'm a pharmaceutical rep and in training to do what I'm doing now, I start to see that there's this huge gap. And the doctors, I am going in to train doctors on how to prescribe these medications and what patients would be good at this. And the doctors are telling me, I don't have time to help my patients with lifestyle. I don't have time to ask my patients about their life and what stressors they have. And I'm sitting here learning in my graduate school that those are the things that cause illness. And so
let's backtrack. Let's
Yeah.
backtrack before you go way deep into that. Let's backtrack to back then when you were 15 and you were going through all the doctors. What was your life like then? What was your physical condition like back then?
Confusing. I questioned, I started to not trust myself, which is what I see happen so often, especially with chronic pain patients and autoimmune patients, which is turns out it's what I have, right? Is an autoimmune.
Because
Um,
you were, as far as I remember, you couldn't walk at some point. Is that correct?
that's in my 30s. Yeah.
That
That
was,
that's later on in life. Once God and the universe had given me everything I needed. And I'll get to that in a second. So um when I was 15, started to doubt that I really was feeling what I was feeling. And I'm not talking about like emotionally, I'm talking about physically.
physically.
I would say, I feel this pain in my hip, I feel this pain in my back, and I'm 15 years old. Um, and the doctors are like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, no, it hurts and it hurts a lot. So starting when I was a teenager, my spine begins to degenerate and I'm blown off by every doctor, told, oh, you're exercising too hard, or it must be how you're sleeping. And
Mhm.
as a 15-year-old, I'm being honest and vulnerable. And I'm saying, well, my friends don't complain of this, and I'm just, so I start to doubt myself and go, well, maybe I'm just whiny and maybe I'm just, uh, you know, I start to doubt myself. I start to feel like my body is betraying me. I
Mhm.
start to try and be outside my body rather than in my body. And that's where, when my sister dies, when I'm 17, my therapist says, you're having panic attacks because of all these things, right? Not only your sister dying, but you doubting yourself. And so yoga brings me back into myself. Yoga teaches me to lean into my discomforts and honor my body, and not shy away from the signals and things that your body is trying to give you as a gift, right? They're guidance mechanisms. So moving forward, I'm a pharmaceutical rep. I see these gaps. I see physicians telling me, like, I don't have time to coach my clients. I don't have time to help my clients with their emotions and what's happening in their life and their stressors and their habits. And that's the foundation of holistic medicine and Eastern medicine, right? Let's look at the roots. Let's look at the dimensions of a person and how it's being manifested in their physical symptoms and their body. Um, so, I'm
So you worked for the rep company, the pharmaceutical rep companies. You're going to school. You're raising a child, from what you're talking about, and that was when in your 30s, right?
correct. But I didn't tell you the best part. So I'm a pharmaceutical rep repping pain medication.
On top of all that, right?
And I've been in pain my whole life, being told that I'm wrong, right? You don't have pain. No, you're totally wrong. So I'm still having pain in my spine. I'm still having pain in my hip. I fell off a horse when I was 20. I used to ride horses, and I did it for therapy. I did it for, the therapeutic aspect of being with the horse and riding. And it certainly is. But I fall off the horse. And this is a precursor, right? Back to like, trust your instinct. Don't let people negate how you're feeling. And the doctors are like, they do a scan and an x-ray, and they say to me, your back has some serious deterioration. First time I got validated, right? And they're like, you're probably going to need to see an orthopedic surgeon. Life goes on then, because I have a baby, I'm busy, I'm working, all these things. And then I'm able to form the first ever program in a hospital where I merge holistic medicine and Eastern psychology with Western medicine. So I'm, at my peak. I'm living my purpose. I'm so excited. I get to merge everything that I learned and I studied for and help people. My practice was being part of the pain team, right? Again, like life gifting me things. I was part of the pain team. I worked under neurology. I loved my job. But a little bit before that, about 2 years before that, I was working in that same organization, doing employee wellness programs. And I taught a yoga class for the employees as part of their stress management. And I was doing a yoga pose, and I my feet came out from under me. And as soon as I hit the floor, I was like, I can't feel my legs. It was this instant knowing that I couldn't feel my legs. And I was a pain rep still at the time. And so I go to see the surgeons that I know, the orthopedic guys that I personally know, like we've been to lunch, like I know these guys. And they're like, yeah, you should probably build a ramp at your house because I'd lost all the reflexes on the left side of my body. I did regain feeling in my legs after not feeling them after a couple of days, but they told me like, this is quickly deteriorating and you're probably never going to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
And my insurance denied. My insurance kept telling the doctors, she needs more pain management. And they're like, she can't feel her legs. Like, what pain are we going to manage? So it was a fight between my insurance and the doctors. It was, me knowing that like we were running out of time. It was physicians that I knew and had relationships with telling me like, this is your future and you need to accept it. And I had enough tools through my graduate program and psychology and understanding that we decide what a diagnosis is going to be, right? Like I knew that is not something I was going to accept. And I kept telling them like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And they kept saying, you're in denial. Oh, poor you, you're in denial. So I had to take my future into my own hands, which I learned from holistic medicine, right? I had to be proactive. I had to seek alternatives. I wasn't just going to take a diagnosis and make it who I was. And so I ended up going to an orthopedic surgeon in Mexico City, which is where I was from, that said, let's try this. I think I can help you. And I was like, that's better than being told you're doomed, right? Or I had been told in the US that like, if I tried anything in the US, it was going to be 3 or 4 surgeries and it might not work. And they were going to put in all this metal and stuff. And I also wasn't willing to accept that. So I had to move to Mexico, drop my life, move to Mexico, prepare for this surgery. One of my kids had to stay back in the US with my husband. The other one came with me because he was so little. At that point, I had 2 kids. It totally disrupt my life, stop my life. And I went and, I'm walking, I'm running, I'm stronger than ever. So they were wrong. They were wrong.
And it's a great story to tell because they both realign with one another. When you were 15, you experienced the same thing as when you were 30. And it's that same not adopting or acknowledging there's other things that can help us. Like when we're talking about the holistic approach to what we're talking about today is also heal stress and burnout. And these are good stories to highlight what we're dealing with in the medical community. But how does holistic psychology go beyond traditional therapy in helping women heal, not just heal with stress and burnout?
Well, it starts with giving them a place where they can be seen, heard, and validated, right? The Western approach, unfortunately, is more about you need to do this. So they would be like, Tatjana, what's wrong with you is this, and you need to do this. And Eastern psychology, Eastern medicine is more about, I understand this is where you are. Let's look at what has brought you to this point. Not you're doing this wrong or you're not focused on the right thing, but it is more like detective work. What is the root, right? Let's look at what has brought you here. What has your pain become in your life? Because for a lot of people, it becomes our crutch, right? For a lot of people, it becomes our exit strategy of why we don't have to fully function in life. For a lot of people, it becomes our most important partner, right? Like I have seen people that start to freak out when they don't feel pain anymore because it's been such a big part of their life that, sometimes I have my clients that have chronic pain give it a name. because you do form a relationship with it. And sometimes it's a toxic relationship. Sometimes it's a romantic relationship because it's giving you something. Sometimes it's a love-hate relationship. For me, it's become my friend because pain has been the biggest teacher in my life. It's been the avenue from which I'm able to contribute to the world. And I don't know where I would be or who I would be or what I would be doing if it weren't for me having to deal with my pain. So in essence, my pain has forced me, equipped me, and given me the experiences to be able to connect with my clients, with my students when I'm a professor, with people that are sharing their stories, and to say like, I don't know your pain, but I know pain. And
Mhm.
and when you don't know pain, I see this so often in Western medicine where doctors are so dismissive of their patients, and that makes the patient sicker. Even if
Mhm.
it's the right medicine, you can have a miracle medication, but if you're not looking at the patient for their stress, for their lifestyle, for how they think, for how they feel, they're not going to get better.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the clash between Western and Eastern philosophy and traditions, but because people also that are trained in Western medicine and treatments are not trained in the other modalities.
No, and
And
the physicians tell me that all the time. I mean, I still have neurologists. I had a very famous case last year of a young woman that got attacked by a barracuda in the Bahamas, and she went
whoa,
to orthopedic surgeon. They fixed her toes, and then she started having seizures. And the neurologist actually called me and he said, "What is her diagnosis?" Like asking me. And I was like, "Well, I'm not a neurologist, but I can tell you what happened and what types of seizures she's happening and why they're happening." He and other doctors couldn't figure it out because they were just looking at the scans. They were looking purely at the brain. And I'm like, the brain is a responder to the nervous system, which is a
hmm,
responder to our thoughts and our emotions, which is a responder to her not being able to feel and live her trauma.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
explained this to the neurologist, and he was like, "This is so great. This is so valuable." And I'm like, "You're a great doctor." Like, but and I love him and we need him, right? My best friend's son just got in a bicycle accident and he has a concussion, and thank God for the neurologist. Like, I'm not negating what they do, and I'm not saying that they're not good at what they do, but what I am saying is exactly what you're saying. And it's that in medical school, physicians, MDs, are not taught about emotional intelligence. They're not taught about the impact that their words have on their patients. They're not taught about how thoughts and emotions impact our physical body and the interrelatedness and interconnection between them. They're not taught about how our emotional life impacts our health and how our families and stress levels impact our health. So they don't understand it, and they're not trained to deal with that. They're
Let's
not.
talk about emotional intelligence. What is that? What does it do? And what does it even mean?
Oh, so you'll hear different sort of definitions of emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence is the exact same thing, except it offers us a different sort of outcome as IQ, right? So IQ, everybody knows IQ means your brain's capacity to process and manage information and then output information into the world, right? Emotional intelligence is the same thing, but with your system of information that people call emotions, and then we then say I feel, which is the interpretation of the emotion, right? And then that translates into how we show up in the world and then how we connect to the world. So the way that I have set up my emotional intelligence explanations to people in trainings and how I explain it to my students when I teach is emotional intelligence has four parts, right? So the first part is self-awareness. Can I know when I'm sad? Can I sit there and go, I'm feeling this energy inside of me that's trying to tell me something that is manifesting in a heavy way inside of myself? Can I call that something? Can I name it? Can I recognize it? So that's awareness, right? Reflection is, yeah, I am sad, and I'm sad because, and there comes the who, what, when, where, how, right? The detective work of getting to the root of like, why am I feeling sad? So I go from the root up the trunk. Well, because I broke up with my boyfriend, into the branch, and I also lost my job. And then boom, there's the sadness, right? There's the symptom. But treating the sadness isn't going to make me not feel sad, right? I have to know, how did I get here? So that's the self reflection. And then comes the self regulation. So we have self awareness, self reflection, and then self regulation. So I'm sad, and I got to sad because of all these things that happened to me, and my behavior and my actions and my choices. And self regulation says, so now what am I going to do about it? Do I need to do anything about it? Do I lean into the sadness and just let it pass? Do I need to go for a run? Do I need to cry? Do I need to call a friend? Right? Like, what am I going to do with the sadness? How am I going to regulate this energy inside of me, this energy in motion, which is what an emotion is? And then all those three facets of you being able to run through these cycles will then translate into the fourth phase, or the fourth dimension, which is your social awareness, and how you interact. So when you have these courses that are like, let me teach you how to have empathy towards others, wrong. Because if I don't have emotional intelligence, I'm never going to be able to have empathy. Now, I can get trained through cognitive behavioral therapy to go, oh, Tatjana, you look sad when you go like this. But that's not empathy, right? That's like rote memorization.
Well, so we just want to make sure that we don't lose any of the listeners along the way. So we want to keep it so that everybody understands what we're talking about in our conversation, and how it actually does what you just said. How does it relate to the managing the daily stress and the midlife burnout, which we're talking about in the what you call the juggle struggle?
Yeah. So life has seasons, right? Each season of our life, we have our infancy, we have our childhood, we have our adolescence, we have our young adulthood, and then bam, here we are, right? But I want you to think about it from that perspective, because where we are in middle age, we only have one more stage after that, which is late adulthood. So we've already lived through all of these stages to get to middle age. So we have found ourselves, hopefully. We have played with ourselves, in our young and adulthood. And we've hopefully started to build something, right? And push ourselves and expand. And then we get to middle age and we're like, okay, here I am. Life isn't as fun anymore. I kind of know myself better, or hopefully I do. I definitely didn't accomplish my dreams, because few of us do. And the dreams that we have in adolescence change as we get to know ourselves. And so we get to a place in middle age where it's sort of like a refinding of yourself, because you've been hustling and you've been going, and you've probably had kids and gotten married or had a career, and you have pets and you have all these things in your life. And so middle age is kind of like this opportunity where you get to go, I didn't do what I thought I was going to, or maybe I did do what I thought I was going to. But what I have found in middle age is that the people that are like, yes, I've accomplished every single thing that I've ever wanted to, those people are the ones that go, and why do I still feel like I'm not good enough? And why do I still feel numb? And then the people that are like, I haven't accomplished anything of what I thought, end up feeling like I'm a failure. So those are the two biggest categories that I see in middle age. And then, of course, for women comes a very natural part of us, and that's that our boobs aren't where they used to be. There's some dimples and some wrinkles, and a lot of differences in our physical appearance. And it's not vain, right, for us to worry about it or to think about it. The beauty industry and the anti-aging industry is one of the biggest money makers in the whole world. And that's because they go for our vulnerability, they go for our weaknesses. And the messaging is always, you're not young enough, you're not pretty enough. How do I keep looking like I'm 20? Why don't you look like you're 20? Why do you have wrinkles? You shouldn't have wrinkles. You're too fat, you're too this, you're too that. And so we come to an age where we're in middle age and we're having to rediscover where we fit in and how we fit in into this world that wants us to be young, but we're not young. I mean, that's the reality.
We are young. I'm at the end there of my life. I'm 63. I feel young.
Well,
And I
how
don't
do you
know,
feel
the
in the
interpretation of
messaging?
being young is a
Yeah.
little different. It's a little, what does it look like? But how does it relate to the burnout and the juggles struggle?
Well, that's exactly where I was going with that. We can't be 60 or like me, 45 and want to act and live like we're 20. We're not. We're not 20. We're not 25. Like we had a fantastic family celebration this weekend. I have a 20-year-old son. He stayed up all night, literally all night long, and was like, as if nothing happened. I stayed up till 1 a.m. and it took me 3 days to recover. So that's what I'm saying. Like, do I still party and celebrate like I'm 20? Absolutely, right? And I can teach my son some things about dancing and having fun and enjoying yourself. But the reality is that our bodies as human beings at the age of 33 go downhill. We can be the healthiest. We can take all the vitamins we need. We can do all the exercises we need to, but our bodies are machines and they're programmed to decline after the age of 33. And so that's what I'm saying. We're not young. You can be young at heart. You can be open. You can be full of love. You can be full of energy. My grandfather is 90 years old and still goes to the gym for 2 hours every day. And he is sharp as can be, but his body isn't responding in the same way. And that's what I'm saying. We have to embrace the fact that it's okay to have wrinkles. And that's where the most amount of stress and burnout comes from trying to run a marathon at the same pace you did in other stages of your life when that's no longer a real capacity or reality. So the burnout and the stress comes from us not accepting ourselves where we are and how we are and being open with ourselves about what we really want and what really matters, because oftentimes we get caught up in what everybody else wants or what society is telling us that we should be or where we should be. And
let's think about this also when we think of the concept of aging and movement that we're talking about right now is how do movement breath work, which you as a yoga practitioner and of course as Pilates coach, we're focusing very much on deep breathing and specific breathing practices and mindfulness help break the stress cycle when traditional methods don't work. So movement, breath work, mindfulness, what do we do?
Yeah, so traditional methods don't work. All the research shows is because the fundamental, most important thing for you to be okay in your nervous system is to down-regulate your nervous system. And the modern world over glamorizes being overscheduled and being busy and burnout, right? They over glamorize that. So most people cannot take 5 deep breaths in a row. They cannot, and they don't. Their whole day consists of rapid chest breathing because we're in traffic, because we're in the juggle struggle, because we're dealing with emails, because we're trying to get dinner, because we got to get laundry, because my hair isn't how I need it to be, because you know what I mean? And so we don't know how to downregulate our nervous system. But when you give somebody a distraction like Pilates, like yoga, where they feel like they're doing something, but really it's more about, can you be present with yourself? Can you tune in to downregulating your nervous system? And so that's where these practices are magical, right? It's not so much the movement, which is also amazing. I do Pilates a lot. I did Pilates this morning, in fact.
Excellent.
but it's more about you signaling your nervous system, I'm safe, I'm okay. That's it. I'm safe, I'm okay. That's what deep breath is. It signals your heart and your lungs and your nervous system that everything is okay. And we don't do that.
I find also in the Pilates practice and just you doing Pilates is that you're connecting the movement to mindfulness. I find this really, if you're focusing on your breath, your movement and being present in the moment instead of chatting with all the other people that are perhaps in a class, it is a very different experience, and it ties in with that mindfulness, with that being present very well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but that's the thing. People don't know how to be present. So anytime there's an outside distraction, it's easier to be out there than to be in here. That's why I don't practice in studios. I practice at home because it's distracting. I'm a social person. I like people and I care about people. So when I try to do my practices for my mindfulness is within us, right? It's not out there. And so when I have distractions, um, I'm like a squirrel. I can't do it. So that's why it's so important that we learn as a part of our mindfulness to be alone and to be with ourselves.
Yeah. So based on our conversation today, what would be some advice that you can give our listeners based on the Spark method or the Spark framework, which is strategic, purposeful, authentic, resilient, and or knowledgeable?
So I think the most important thing is to learn to be authentic with yourself. And that is very challenging, right? To tell ourselves the truth, because oftentimes we are our own worst enemy and we're limiting ourselves from our spark being lit, or we feel our spark and we tone it down because we're not willing to shine that bright, or we feel like we don't deserve to shine that bright, or we feel like other people aren't going to accept it. So I think authenticity leads us to be more resilient than we knew we could be. And it also helps us regulate trying to not let external things dictate what our life is going to be or our outcome or where we feel we're inadequate, especially in midlife, right? Because that's the stage of life research shows us where most people feel the most defeated with themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, what are you most excited about right now?
Not feeling like I have to accomplish anything. I finally gave myself permission to stop trying.
That is a great goal or a great accomplishment or whatever you're looking for. This is fantastic because it's so liberating, isn't it?
It is liberating because I have spent a lot of my life working towards, I want to do this, I want to contribute this, I want to accomplish this, I want to study this, I want to help myself, I want to help others, I need to get my kids raised, I need to, have all the things that we worry about. And finally I was like, no, I'm most excited about that I've made a commitment to enjoy my life.
Before I let you go, I want to give you a quick heads up. If you're anything like me, summer can throw your rhythm off. Routines shift, priorities blur, and before you know it, you're wondering how to get back to feeling grounded again without falling into traps of quick fixes or guilt. That's exactly what we're tackling in the next episode, and I'll walk you through a simple, supportive way to reset your routine that actually works, and it is fun. But we're taking a short break in August, so that next episode will drop September 4th. And if you got my book, Pursue Your Spark, this is the perfect time to start reading. Let it guide you through the pause, take what speaks to you, and most importantly, take action. And I'll see you in September.